Hey, welcome everyone to the Agency Sessions. I'm Jason Fisher, and we decided to unveil our vision to Omaha with some of the best and brightest minds in the community to be able to build a narrative around how we're going to build this content creator hub, one of the first of its kind here in Omaha. We've been cooking up this idea for years, and now it's time to involve you, the listeners. This podcast is your backstage pass to the journey. From the freshest voices to the classic minds, Agency unites us all. Join us from a what if to we will. These are the Agency Sessions, igniting your creativity and inspiring action. Buckle up. So we're here today with Johnny Nesbit.
Yes.
And, many people I've talked to are multifaceted. I would say you definitely are.
Yes, you could definitely say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I like that because that says a lot about not only you as a person, but the people that I think have a broad vision of Omaha and beyond. Just happen to be people who are doing a few different things in a lot of different areas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So limitless folks. So Johnny, where are you at? Who are you? How do we describe you, man?
Yes. So, again, I wear several hats, like you already mentioned. I am currently been employed at FNBO for 16 years, my entire career at First National Bank of Omaha.
Okay.
Started off as an intern in college and graduated, and they offered me a full-time position. And looking back now, it's been 16 years.
Wow. So right at 5 years old, you were there. No.
Yeah, well, right out of college.
Okay.
Right out of high school. Freshman year in college, I established a GPA and got into the internship program and been involved ever since.
Man, that is amazing. That's a journey.
It speaks to the programs that I was involved in growing up as a kid, being involved from the basics. With my mom, I was never able to sit at home and just chill on the weekends or even the weekends. Saturday, I would say we were probably at the house by 9, 10 o'clock. I always dreamed of the snow days where I'll be able to sleep in a little bit, but then wake up with a big old bowl of cereal and watch one Saturday morning or some cartoons or something. Yeah, because that rarely ever happened. I was usually up 9 o'clock, performing arts, some kind of development, upward bound, something, but not sitting at home, laying around, doing anything. So I kind of carry that into, my adulthood.
Yeah.
So, even though I am employed at FNBO, I'm also very active in the community. I am past president of the Urban League of Nebraska Young Professionals, but been involved with that organization for 15 years. Also the Urban Financial Services Coalition, been involved. I'm president of that organization currently and been involved with them for over 15 years. Member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated.
There you go.
I sit on several boards.
Sure.
Very involved just because as growing up, so many of these programs that I participated in poured into me, helped develop me, get me to where I'm at now. And I feel like the way that I can reciprocate that is just going back and giving back to those organizations. So I thoroughly enjoy it.
No, I it's great to hear someone else say that, because I say the only thing that my mom did was exactly the same thing. And I didn't realize it, and I don't know if you did, but my mom wasn't literal about it. She just always kept me busy, always kept me in something else, and that kept me out of everything else that I wasn't supposed to be in most of the time.
Exactly. Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. But yeah, newspaper route, at like 9 or 10 years old. So I'm a little bit older, so they still had papers and stuff. Stone tablet on the Flintstones there. But yeah, so it was just wild because I thought about the same thing. I didn't understand weekends. I didn't understand that, and so. It's a gift and a curse. I think now I've got to a point now where I think we say the saying that I've heard is you say yes as much as you can until you can afford to say no.
You know what? I haven't heard that version because I have a problem with not being able to say no. Been struggling. I've been working on making sure that I say no more often, but it's always been. That's so I never looked at that perspective of it, but I think that's a good way to look at it. I learned that in business, and it was a really wise term. And I'll tell you what, it would be a seed and it will blossom when it's time. I promise you that.
Because I was like, what does that even mean? It's kind of like, it is what it is. And when those, like, kind of those old head sayings start making sense, you're like, what does that even, that's not even a thing, and then you hear some, some of our younger counterparts say things, and you're like, oh, health, what is it? I'm taking a health day, or what is it?
Mental health
break or mental health something. Yeah. They'll throw things out that are like, kind of double-sided a little bit, but we'll go on to it. But yeah, definitely staying busy is what I see you doing and what I see you engaged in. It's obviously it's worked out.
Yes.
Because we see the things that you're doing and the trees that you're planting, and like you said, it poured into you, so poured in back. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like I shared with you a little bit about this, and I've said it probably with every person I talk to, just to give backfill, and I'll keep it short. There was this moment that there was Ben Gray, and maybe aware of him. Yep. Everybody now, Ben's at an interesting age because of technology and because of generational and everything else. Things moved really quickly in the past 20 years, on how people move in social, circles. And so there was this interesting thing that happened when he didn't get reelected. And he even kind of said, hey, look, if someone comes and talks to me, I don't even want to run again, but I'm nervous because I've made all these great relationships at my job and the work. And now I'm kind of in a position where no one's approached me and I can't really find anyone to mentor and take under my wing to be a city council person. He's went to all these different events and these things and everything else. I also feel we're stretched really thin because as busy as we are, it's also the part to where our legacy planning kind of lacks because of our support systems that, are with family, with community, with everything else. So we're wearing a lot of hats, whether you like it or not, even if you don't got a parent or parents who pushed you. I just see that a lot as I get older. I'm watching like the legacy planning, the cliff effect as I think about it. And so it just kind of hit me. So he ran for office, he got done, and the narrative had shifted from the voting narrative for him. Everybody who knew him from like Kaleidoscope, this show he did for 30 years, and I didn't know it was for like 30 years. Yeah. Longest running show in the state of Nebraska as far as community based, right? Mm-hmm. And you're over here like, what, and even me, I'm 47, just to put myself out there. And I was kind of like, wait a minute, like, well, how do you have to be? So I did the math on it. And for someone to really be into Kaleidoscope, they had to be about 30, 35 back in the 90s. Okay. So 30, 35 back in the 90s. So you're talking about a pretty big age gap. So what happened is kind of the perfect storm, the perfect evolution of technology, of narrative, of age, of generation. And so people went online and even people that kind of knew Ben didn't know Ben because they were of an age range that unless someone was 50 today, 50 plus, like older than me, like I didn't watch Kaleidoscope very much. I seen a few things, heard the legend of, but I was at college and everything else. And so I wasn't watching Kaleidoscope, And so, it goes to show like what happened with him is the narrative got to be is because it wasn't in a format that younger generations would see. That's so what happened. It was erased. Now, it's nothing against Ben. Then I did a little bit of digging, and then I realized that like a lot of news stations weren't archiving any of their tapes, which is a majority of like news until it was like film, but we're talking about they didn't archive any of their videotapes hardly at all to digital format. I just assumed that most of the stuff on the internet, like most people, is like, oh, you can find anything on the internet. Right. But now we're talking about, and this is not a local phenomenon. This isn't just an Omaha thing, but I'm taking it personal because we can do something about it here. And at least it all starts here, right? I can't save the world just yet. We got to start here. But I realized like that was uncommon. So if you go to try to find like a 90s Huskers game, that's the best thing I can tell somebody. I'm not a huge football fan, but I do remember back in the 90s is the Orange Bowl, 95, golden era of football, anybody, and why to this day, we don't have any pro teams, so, it's go on and on.
Exactly.
But that was the golden era.
Yep.
And so if you go try to find one game,
you will not find any games, not a streaming platform, not anything. It's sitting on a tape somewhere or a DVD somewhere, and that's it. And if they don't have, if someone doesn't come and step up and start doing some of these things, I was just like, no wonder each generation is kind of like, get out the way. You all aren't doing anything. You haven't done anything out here, because it doesn't exist to them. Like, why would they know?
Yep.
You know, it's kind of the same thing as they're trying to do with books and everything right now, where they're like, we'll just change the terminology on this, and it's not slavery. They were indentured servitude, or, you know, they were working summers, you know, hard for the thing, you know. And
that makes it extremely challenging for our kids in this generation to be able to go back and really know our authentic history. And that's a huge challenge. And nothing that I ever really put much thought into it until literally more recently.
Right.
Never even thought about if there was something that I wanted to learn about or get more information about that existed before the internet or before all these technological advances. How would I be able to obtain that information? And until more recently, it's like, wow, you can't unless you have the video.
And it's not readily accessible, you know.
So even to find the video you have to figure out where to find it at.
It's in a box in someone in a business's basement, basically. And that's kind of, and then that has a shelf life. And that shelf life means like it's coming up to where it will just automatically start separating and degrading, just like paper. It'll just start, you know, so the color will start going away, all these weird things. And the only valuable part of that is especially locally, is that so many of our people, so many of our history, so much of our stories, it disappears. And when we don't know about ourselves, it starts becoming like a disconnect, you know, and then the narrative is made up, right? We find, I don't know if you find some photos of old family and everything else, and you don't have the oral history, the relative to tell you who was in that photo. I'll tell you what, I found a photo of my mother, and for a long time, I had made up this little story, and I brought it, and I think I had like this whole collage, because my mother passed away about 20 something years ago. And so I brought it to my family. I was like, I showed them it, and I was like, okay, tell me about this one. And got to this photo, and they said, that's not your mom. You know, and I thought it was her as a baby.
Right.
As you know, maybe 5 years old, maybe something else. I thought it was just her as a kid. But all the photos on there were my mom, except for this one. And I just thought that was my mom. I was like, oh, maybe it's, you know, it's 5 years old, probably.
Shows how important it is to have that context in the back. That you need, yes.
So that oral tradition, that stuff, all the things, but it's bigger than that. It's culture. And that's where it came to be. And I said, well, how do we not only, you know, we'll start with Ben, because really the thing came to be is like, we're going to digitize all Ben's tapes. I didn't have any grand idea. It was like, step one, let's just digitize Ben's tapes and let's get them on YouTube. We'll just put them out there. Because for me, it was important because it wasn't just about Ben, it was about the culture. Because I was like, if there was a guy who ran the longest running television show for 30 years, what else? And then Ben tells me, the Washington Library is named after a Black journalist as well from Omaha. So, yeah. So you look it up, and there's a lot of people. Rudy Smith, who's a photographer. He was the first Black photographer of the Omaha World Herald, and the longest probably photographer for Omaha World Herald. You know, all these folks that I'm standing on the shoulders of. So I brushed across these people. None of them came to me and sat me down and said, you know what you got to do? Got to make sure you protect your thing. Rudy did mention his archive of his photography, just sharing his passion. And that was it. And Ben never even thought twice about it. He's just like, it's on tape, but never thought like, oh yeah, this should be online. So that was kind of the huge thing that kind of brought up the idea. And I said, well, how do we get the next generation? How do we get kids to care first off? And so, you know you got to meet them where they're at.
Yep.
And I kept thinking, and I said, okay, well, Ben, you got to do a podcast. I told Ben, I was like, you got to do a podcast. That's what you got to do right now. I know you're not feeling it and everything else because you feel like Omaha forgot about you and everything else. And I said, your generation, there's this cliff effect. And the voters who are the most active voters right now are not in your demographic. And they were, but COVID and everything else. And we seen the numbers were so upside down. It was like the preliminaries and the primaries were like backwards.
Yes.
It's like more people showed up in the beginning, but not at the actual election because they probably just figured it was in the bag. So we got what we got now, and we know how that's turning out slowly but surely. We'll get the ship turned around. And it's bigger than that, though, because, the narrative too common, this would be a whole nother show for me, is that, our older generations, they didn't do anything. They didn't work hard enough. They didn't do it big enough. They didn't, it's just a common narrative. Get out the way. We got the answers, and it's tough to hear that. So the short of it is after Ben was kind of like, I don't know if a podcast is it. We came up with some, we came up with all these ideas, and I said, you know what? It's right here. I was like, this is journalism now. Yeah. This is culture right now. This is whatever tool we want it to be. Poetry, culture, art, photography, video. Our kids are already doing it right in their hands. I was like, what happens if you give them a whole bunch of podcast studios? What happens if you give them, some photography and video and everything else? Just something they can come in just like this and come plug in, turn on a switch, and be ready to tell their story or share their jokes or share their, passions, dreams, concerns, whatever, and just have fun.
Oh, they're ready.
Yeah.
My daughter is 5.
Yeah.
And she watches other kids on YouTube do kid things. And I'm like, you could be doing those things too. You could go outside and play. You don't have to sit up here and watch other kids go out and play. Now she does get a good, a good amount of physical activity, but I just like,
it's mind blowing, right?
Yes. Early, they start off early. Now the whole discussion is how soon do you get them a phone? You don't want it to be too soon, but then, it's somebody like if they're active, you want them to be able to be contacted or, tracked.
Sure.
So yes.
All the things.
Yes.
So, I'm just curious to see your thoughts on if there's a space and a place like that for your daughter, for older kids, for everything else to, we'll sneak in the educational part because, again, if I tell them set up a camera and I show them how to set up the camera, I show them like the guy came in here and helped us set up the mics and everything. After a while, all of a sudden they're camera operators, they're engineers, they're directors, they're doing graphic design. But we didn't tell them like we go into a class to go do this. We just said, go have some fun.
Yep.
And it's not, it's not instant. You still got to help set up, do the things, What do you imagine would happen in the near future? Or what do you see that as? Just, we haven't built the thing yet, but what do you imagine that looks or feels or?
I see that leading to a whole new generation of entrepreneurs. Of these young people that are learning a new skill that they would then be able to take into the workplace and be their own boss. So run their own, media companies or, with this newfound knowledge. I think it's important that we encourage that instead of the whole traditional, and I'm a financial literacy, that's my area of expertise. So, to go to school, go to college and work for a corporation for 40 years, that whole thing doesn't really resign with me. I don't like the way that sounds. I would encourage any young person to take their own path. And it might not necessarily mean college, but you do want to further your education and make sure that you have the skills that you need. Yes, it could be a technical school. It could be mentorship, whatever. But it doesn't have to be a 4-year institution or 4-year college. But I think being able to open that door for them and see the different opportunities available,
sure,
they can become their own boss and run their own companies doing this same thing that they have just in their free time didn't realize that they even had a passion for it. It's like, oh, wow, this is way more fun than I thought. Sure. And they start off young enough to where that passion just burns and grows to where by the time they graduate high school, they're ready.
Sure.
Ready to take it to that next level.
And there's so many different ways that, like you said, those skills blossom into something else, and they find their own agency. And so I have to plug that, but at the same time, though, the wildest thing is I don't know if it's the wildest, but I went to school for engineering. Mechanical engineering. Got a scholarship from AT&T, and I was really good at art, drawing. Still am. It's my creative passion. But I realized I didn't know any artists. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any outlets either in that, and so everybody I knew as an artist wasn't quite the type of art that I wanted to do. I thought I was going to go work for Marvel, which I could have. But the interesting thing is that, life did what life does. And it kind of is a culmination now of all the things that I kind of learned. And I never planned on going for a video or a film or anything else. But like you said, it's kind of one of those things that it was the educational part or the experimentation part that opened the door to the next. And that was kind of where I'm at now.
That's crazy because I actually went to school, started off with engineering as well.
Okay.
Civil engineering.
Okay.
And I was forcing it because I knew the income, because I took an engineering class in high school.
Sure.
And I can't draw.
Okay.
Like we had to draw a house, and my house was a square with 2 rectangle windows and a rectangle door and a line and a triangle. Yeah. And I failed. I took it to my mom. My mom was like, "What is this?" And my mom actually had to enhance and I was like, "You know what? This isn't engineering. Isn't for. I'm not a numbers person like that. To where math was really that intriguing to me. But I'm glad that I did, because life has a way of lifing.
Sure.
And I switched my major almost immediately, and now I'm where I'm at, and I really feel like this is where I'm supposed to be anyway. I don't know what I was doing being interested in engineering. and
you gotta get in where you fit in, as old people say. But no, I think you gotta kind of just feel your way around. There's the Asian philosophy, whereas the intersection of what you're good at, what the world needs, and what can make you money. I know there may be another one, but it's Ichigon or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but I'll look it up later, and then we'll put it on the screen for you. But I realized like I didn't know that at the time, but that's kind of what happened is that, these skills, I taught myself coding and all these other things to start my business. It was a pretty rough time in my life. My mom had passed away, and I was kind of just doing some side hustles because I didn't really want to take on a lot of responsibilities when my mom was sick. And so long and the short, it took off on accident. It was the happy accident, it was the culmination of things. And my son wasn't born yet. I didn't have a lot of bills. I was roughing it. The struggle meals were there. And, it was like college 2.0, and I realized like now if I do anything and if I share that with anyone, like you said, secondary education is everywhere. Education's, learning is a lifetime or whatever they say.
Yes.
And you can learn from anything. But if you treat anything like a college, like a school, like anything else, if you take that much focus and notes and everything else, whether it's at work, right? And you start taking, and it's transferable and it clicks. And then all of a sudden you can do whatever we decide to do. But I'm excited to see, what a space and place like this does for the culture, because there is a kind of a cultural gap for African Americans, Black folks here and beyond. And the most exciting thing is knowing that we have some of the most influential folks in the world. I mean, you think how big hip hop is. I mean, a friend of mine said, we got to make shirts. And this is a long time ago, hip hop made in America. And I was like, okay, because it is one of those things that's a cultural phenomenon globally. And I imagine like when I see like some of the shows that were kind of the places where they would start out with a group of talented people, some of the variety shows or whatever. I mean, there was this old show on Living Color. I always use that example.
Yep,
and
I love the Living Color.
Where are they at now blows your mind, because that's what I see for the seeds. Like, so if we had a place and space like this and they're getting nurtured and curated, and we know all the old groups and even current groups that were like nurtured by parents and producers and managers and everything else at a young age, and you see where they went and where it took them. It's some of the greatest of our entire generation of an era. And that's what I see is I can imagine if you just had a hub and we just have yourself and me and other people and the folks who are running this podcast, kind of being support systems around them. I don't know what type of culture or what type of fun they would have. Limitless.
And you think about the kids that may not even have an interest or might not even know what this is.
So
you have the kids who do, who will come, but maybe they might bring that friend who has no idea. Now you just opened a whole new world for a kid that never, and that could be that lost child that needs that saving, just didn't know what he was looking for, didn't know where to look for it at, but came one day with his friend who was like, this is so dumb, because that's happened to me before as well.
Sure.
And I was like, why are we doing this? And get there, it's like, wow, this is life changing. I'm so glad you brought me to this.
Sure.
I literally see this as something that's life changing for the youth.
I thank you for saying that, because I think I was that shy kid in the background who was like, normally I'm not. It took me a long time to get in front of the camera because I was really comfortable. I'm still very more comfortable behind the camera, but that was my kind of my saving grace in a sense, And I think there's a lot of kids they think they all want to be the all-star, the front of the camera person, in my era, they wanted to be the rapper, and it went from the rapper to the NBA, or the NBA player that. And now if you ask a group of kids at probably, I would say grade school to high school, you're going to get probably about 80-90%. What do you think?
Social media influencer. Social media influencer.
100%. You will win the Family Feud on that. You will win
that. Is the number one
answer. All the answers.
Yes.
That's all the answers.
Like you said, they have that phone there. Is right there. That's what they know. That's what they see. And that's what when they see other people, then you see the success that comes along with that, which social media takes on a whole different, success on social media makes it looks a lot exaggerated sometimes.
Oh man, my meals look great. I only show the good ones. I don't show the struggle meals.
Exactly.
I meal prep, and I'll tell you what, I can eat chicken breast like about 7 times a week, 10 times a week.
Yep.
And you're only going to see those really good meals that I have. But that lens through the world that they see it through, that's how they see the world, right?
Exactly.
And so for them to be able to create their own agency and create their own reality for themselves, which is all it is manifesting it.
Exactly.
It's like you said, it's limitless.
Yes.
Man. So I'm just geeked behind that because I would say when I started doing a lot of the research on this, and I talked to a number of different folks, we've been doing a series of these podcasts. We're going to take these and kind of break them up and put them on different social media platforms just to kind of put the breadcrumbs out about agency. Just the idea of having a space in place. We've got a lot of interested parties, and I'm excited to see who you can bring to the table.
Yes.
Locally, who do you know that you look to as an influencer besides Bud Crawford? I'm not knocking Bud Crawford. He's just a phenomenon beyond bigger than bigger life.
Yep.
And I'm so thankful for that, that era. Did you? Okay.
Yep.
So
who would I from Omaha?
But what school did you go to?
Oh, Omaha North. Oh, I graduated from Omaha North High School. Yeah.
With Bud, huh?
Well, I don't think he graduated from North. I know he went there a couple years while I was there.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think he graduated from North. But I am a very proud Omaha North High alumni.
There you go. As many other things. But no, Bud is a phenomenon. Bigger, he's bigger than an influencer.
Yes.
I don't know what you call that.
Well, especially now, because I think it was a little bit of a struggle to get to where he is now, because he wasn't given the respect for a long time.
He wasn't.
Yes, definitely.
This is a game changer. We knew already, but because I know his discipline and I've seen his discipline, and I don't know any other boxer's discipline, but I just know people. And when I seen and I'm his personal Facebook friend, I was happy to be there. In fact, short story, he came in with one of his partners after his first win to my office. And he didn't know if he was going to get in a fight. He didn't know where his next meal was coming from because it was kind of a happy accident for him that he got that first fight. So he comes in and one of my associates comes in and he brings him in. He's like, I want you to talk to this guy. He just won a fight. I had no idea who he was. And he says, hey, probably want to start thinking about getting a website done. And I think his partner was going to pay for it or either match him on money because he really believed in him and he supported him. And so it didn't happen because he just didn't know what tomorrow was going to bring. Yeah. But I'm glad that the brand grew because anytime we see each other now, I'm just like, he probably would have changed my whole bit. I don't know if I'd have had it would have been too big for my business.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But seeing things like that we need more of those than there. But locally, who do you see that you think is, they don't have to be a global phenomenon, but who do you see as okay, they got a good aesthetic. They got a good, I see them doing their thing out here locally. Who's some folks?
So for me, I would say I'm a part of the Urban League of Nebraska Young Professionals. We just had a gala and we awarded some folks in the community that are doing some major things. Yeah. Joanna LaFleur at the Malcolm X Foundation.
Yes, Joanna.
Manny Cook. in the community as well.
All the time, man. Yeah.
And then Malcolm Tiller was another awardee there.
Yeah.
So I mean, but I just look at the things that they're doing, and I would say that we kind of talked about that new generation, that cliff that you talked about.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm kind of a part of that newer generation trying to take the lead, because I think it's time for more innovative ideas. Not to say that we need to push the older generation out. I feel like this is that perfect time for us to work together as we transition from that. The baton pass. Exactly.
Yeah, or the torch, passing the torch.
We're right in that, exactly, because I know I have several friends that are becoming executive directors at nonprofits in the community, taking that lead now. Okay. So I feel like that handoff is more critical now than ever. And I think that's what we need to work on and really get a hold on, so that handoff is pretty smooth, and we have the historical context that we need to make sure that we are moving forward in the right direction. Because again, you don't know how to move forward if you don't know where you came from. That part where we're losing that history. And I mean, I was talking to Fletcher, and he gave me so much historical knowledge about the city of Omaha that I never knew. That
Fletcher will blow your mind.
We never learned any of that at Omaha, North Omaha, and I put it out there. Any of the schools I went to never were talked about. I mean, pre-civil rights, how successful and how beautiful North Omaha was prior to that, and how much talent and life-changing things came out of North Omaha.
It's mind-blowing. Even when you say that, Fletcher's put me on so many folks. He was the one, and then Deb Bunting. She was the one who was telling me about, I think it was like the Lincoln Film. I got to go back and look at the tape. So we'll look at that later. But they were both telling me about a black director from Omaha back in black and white era. Okay. That was like the biggest like black director in the country, and how big it was. But we've heard about the jazz scene. We've heard about all the things. And to it not be like, you go to KC at all?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So you go to KC and you're like, okay, I see a jazz thing, and I see that, and they got the Jazz Museum and the Negro League, and everything else. And somehow it just got completely lost here.
Never knew about that. He told me about architects that I never thought that much rich history came out of North Omaha. Yeah. And I don't know why it's gone. It's breezed over. It's not touched.
And I don't even think it's intentional. I think people focus on what they know. Yeah. And so I would say we haven't had, as an African-American black community, haven't had the resources to preserve and even have the time to think about preserving. True. There have been a few handfuls of people that I know of that are in that arena, but I don't feel like there's been a whole kind of organization that has like the preservation part of it. You got the Durham Museum and other folks that are, for all of Omaha, but they're going to focus on what they know. Yep. And so a lot of our historical facts, we got the Great Plains Black History Museum. They do fairly well. I'm not sure what they're
on the board for the Great Plains Black History Museum.
Well, yeah, so they do fairly well. And I'm not sure. I remember there was Neville Murray, who was over at the Love Jazz and Arts Center. And when it first started, and so Neville, older cat, he shared with me, he's got a lot of funding for like photo scanners and all these archival things. And I kind of got it. I was like, oh, that's cool. It's cool. But I didn't really understand until like now. I was like, oh, wow.
That's important now.
Like, this is big, because like you said, if you don't know where you're from, you can't get where you're going. Is that something? What did you say? Something like that?
Well, if you don't know it's hard to move forward if you don't know where you came from.
If you can't move forward, if you don't know where you came from, it's like your GPS. You just show up on the map and you're like, how did I get here?
Exactly.
And it's very disorientating, if we want to use that kind of thing. I just see a lot of people, including myself, when I've heard the stories from my own family, fortunately to hear a few, that is my compass on some things. And I mean, you read between the lines, but when we don't have any lines to read, it's tough, man. And that's where we see right now is a lot of, not everybody, but quite a few lost folks. And I'll tell you, for me, that's what I see is like, we put some of that in there. I wouldn't say it's all historical, but we partner with the Omaha Star. We partner with NOMA. We partner with the Great Plains Black History Museum, because if you kind of took that Venn diagram where you take the different circles and overlap, media is like the most modern way to connect all of those things. You know, none of those are really focused on media. They have like a media component, like Union. They'll have something, and they do a little podcast, they do a little thing, but it's like one little tiny room and it's a few little things. But man, how magical would it be if those kids that were doing like some of those things, that they had a third party that said, we'll archive it for you. We'll do these things, do what you do with your media, but we'll back it up for you. And then they come back and they know they can go to the place and be like, remember that podcast I did? Or remember we were doing the thing on the mics? I don't even, and they can go back and listen to what they said. Because
which cannot be done right now from the I guess I almost said prehistoric, but you could say prehistoric. Like, I mean,
sure.
Because I don't know. I have a question, because I'm wondering how much work and effort goes into digitizing. I mean, you're talking about the gentleman that had the equipment and things, and now you're seeing that now. What goes into digitizing? Because you're talking about now they're getting at that age to where they're losing color and things. Is it as easy? Is it a pretty quick and easy thing?
You do the best you can on it, from my understanding. I don't do it myself. I'm aware of some of the process that you can do, and the technology's come a long way to be able to do it. But there's a few companies that specialize in that. And you know, that damage that comes along with it is inevitable. I mean, it's like going on an archivology thing where you see the people in pyramids and stuff, and they're taking the brush. I don't think it goes that far, because it's not that old. The wildest thing is we're not talking about 100 years old. We're talking about within our lifetime, that when we were watching The Living Color, it was on tape. It was recorded on tape.
Well, I remember like some of the longer movies needing multiple. I remember Malcolm X was 2 tapes.
2 tapes, right?
And it's like and I'm wondering like if that's gone. Like, there's so much power in that movie. Oh, if that was the last thing. Like I know that's digitized, but I'm just thinking of things like that come from. I'm thinking of when I had back in the day, we had a wall full of DVDs and VHSs, and now they're completely gone. But I feel like the majority of those I might be able to catch on Netflix or find online then. But I'm thinking about even before that collection that I had when I was young, my mom's collection. That's probably not even. And
it depends. So that's the interesting thing about it. When there's money involved, money gets to kind of be a good and a bad thing. But I'll tell you what, when Warner Brothers or when, you know, this company or that company, when those big name companies have it, that is when they say they own your masters.
Okay.
That's why it's so important, because they realize that each generation, they want to have the most what they call non-degradable version of media. And in that, you know, each era kind of has the best version of it, and they'll know, like, we're going to record on this, or we're going to back it up on this. And so they do different variations. Sometimes it's magnetic tape, sometimes it's C-Quartz, which is like some special laser disc thing, but they'll back it up on that data-wise, because when that next VR comes out, or that metaverse or whatever else, that one has the most data from that film piece or anything else that they can convert over and make more money off of.
Well, that makes sense, because they're usually putting millions of money into the movie and production and things like that. So you'll definitely want to put the money into making sure that you preserve all this money that you just put into this movie.
100%. And so if you kind of notice now, at least I've been watching Netflix for far too long, but you know, I started noticing like 70s films will pop up and this and that. And it's not just Star Wars. It'll be the weirdest kind of off cuff. I'm like, okay, I seen Stir Crazy come up, you know, with the Richard Pryor movie, and I'll see like his series come up. And sometimes when they like, I just remembered Indiana Jones. Okay, so that was a you know, really big series of films. That's an American, you know, classic and everything else. And so they had what they did is I noticed, and I'm a marketing nerd. So what they did is they re-released them on all the stream systems that had commercials like Freevee and this, that, and the other, and Pluto. And they released them for free because they were using as free commercials to bring up nostalgia for the one that they released. So they were like re-releasing them. So they had them all scanned in. They did everything else. They digitized them and everything else. And they would do that. You know, so it's different ways. You release box sets. You do all the things for people to do that. Now, people don't buy box sets anymore. So when they can give it to Freevee and they can say, all right, well, give us, you know, 20, 30,000 for that, or I don't know how much it is, you know. But, they can get back their money, and it's instead of them spending money on commercials, they're making kind of some money on, So to give out free content in order to boost nostalgia and say, oh, well, now this is the Spider-Man from back in 2012, and now we're in 2048. Remember the 2012, and they can do that. So I'm sure we'll be in VR and be out there with Spider-Man in the multiverse and all the things. But that's the power of content. And that's what I want these kids to know is when they make a logo, when they make a brand, is as they're doing this, having some workshops, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, all the things are included because they want to be like, that's all they see. It starts out as a kid is like watching other kids play. And the next thing you know, you're watching other kids work and make their dreams come true. And then those seeds are planted. So we want to be able to give them all the tools to be able to fulfill and manifest those dreams. But the biggest thing is that their content is like their 401k planning to some extent, I
love that.
And that's what I learned from, I learned that a long time ago from stock photos and everything else. It used to cost a lot of money to go buy. If a photographer go out and take a bunch of photos and they sell them online back in early 2000s to 2010, it was like $500 a photo. It was a lot of money. And that was the cheap end of it. It could go all the way up. So if it's a celebrity, they're getting paid $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, however crazy it is. And the business model changed to now where stock photography is kind of built into things to where you buy a subscription and they're making money because more people are using the photos and everything case may be for websites or brochures or whatever the case. But the interesting thing is that at some point in time, depending on how, like Rudy Smith, that photographer I was sharing with you about, he would be able to now his art. I mean, he has Louis Armstrong. He has, Martin Luther King. I mean, he's got riots in Omaha. He's got, decades of history in Omaha. So, and he's got they did, fortunately, right after he passed away, they did a book, really nice book about some of his work. But I'll tell you, I think he shared with me, he's like, I do about 10,000 photos every year. And that was his kind of, now that's nothing. Now I probably got that in my iPhone, but for back there, actual physical,
I guess
but for back then, doing physical film,
it's
a lot of that.
I mean, because you're talking taking a picture and then editing those like the old school way.
I don't even think you'd. I mean, you'd have to. You could edit them, but you would go ahead and take those into a dark room, and then you go ahead and make them actual photos. So he'd have the negatives. And then he'd go ahead and get those exposed and do that. But it's just so much. But we could go down a road on there. But what do you see? Kind of now that I've shared that with you, the part to where it's the learning, it's the culture, it's the the kind of staying out of trouble. I mean, it's all the things involved. What sort of things, what other things, I mean, that you can, what do you see? Now you named a few people out there. Do you know any other, do you keep up with any social media or is there anyone else local that you can think of?
I mean, I can think of when it comes to the locally leaders in the community. I mean,
or people that are just big on social media.
Now, so I mean, big on social media. That's a little bit because I'm not as big on social media. So I feel like I could probably use some. And I've been saying I was going to do better. I say it every year. Like I'm gonna do way better at social media this year because there's so much that I do that I just.
But you're social in real life still.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm always out and about. But I mean, but if somebody were to look up on it would be my wife is my savior because she posts so much and kind of she'll capture me and she'll tag me and put the stuff on there. But if it wasn't for her,
you got your PR manager.
Most of the things that I do are not. I don't do a good job of promoting on social media.
I can relate. Yes. I do it for all my clients, and then my stuff is like few and far between. It's kind of the barber with a bad haircut.
Immensely, and I've been told I need to work on that. So, like my stint of social media, just to be 100% honest, when I used to get on, it's like when I find some little free pockets between like a meeting that I'm in, or primarily when I go to the bathroom. When I'm using the bathroom, that's the pastime to kind of keep up with it. I catch up on all my social media then, and after that, it's usually I'm jumping and doing something else. So it's usually when I'm in the bathroom is when I have the free time.
That's what I you know what I said that about TikTok and Reels and everything else. I said, that's a bathroom sport. Just go
Yep.
ahead and pass some time there.
Yep.
But that's
exactly
it.
right.
It is, and it's different. But without those creators, without everything else, and we've just man, the things that I've kind of picked up from the kids who are Black creators younger. There was a whole thing that happened during the pandemic where a lot of dancers, a lot of the creators for TikTok, when it really blew up, was during the pandemic.
Yep.
Like TikTok was small.
Yep.
And a lot of the Black creators I found out were like doing all these dances, and then someone that was white would come in and like redo the dance and not credit or anything else, and like go find all the Black creators and then redo that, take the claim for it. And then like all the Black creators went like on TikTok strike and kind of would shut it down and everything else. And so those are the types of things of like ownership and of legacy and everything else. But we think it's just the dance. We think it's that. But again, these are the ones creating culture. And that's huge.
Well, think about the minds that you're developing here at such a young age. I mean, that's all things that they might not be thinking about now, but when they're involved at such a young age and they're going and they continue to be involved through middle school or high school, whatever that may be, until they get to that age. I mean, those are all things that they'll consider and think about and maybe have take to the next level by the time that they get to, graduation, or where they're looking to implement them in their own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said you have a business that you may be working on.
Yes.
What are you working on?
Financial literacy agency.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
A financial literacy agency.
Yes. My target market is going to be families. Really, I really want to dig deep into generational wealth.
Okay.
And building it. So I feel like if I can not only help adults or parents, but also be able to bring the kids into that as well, it's inevitable to kind of help that whole circle there.
What is that? 2Gen they call
Yep.
it? 2Gen. You know, I learned that term, and 2Gen, 2 generation. It made all of the sense to really break a generational curse, And I don't think it's a curse. I think it's sometimes it's definitely more imposed upon. A lot of time it was imposed upon. And I think it's awesome that you're doing that, man. I can imagine a lot of your daughter probably and your wife and other people who are going to be the surrounding people, and you're going to have to be a social influencer in a sense. Yeah, so get your practice on. That's
what I'm working on. Yes.
Things of that nature be good. I don't know. Is there anything else that I just, as much as you're tied into things, I think the last time, not the last time, because we ran into each other all the time, but I was thinking about the melanin market right down the street.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people over there that I'm just like,
oh man,
you could just tell.
Yes.
Like their social game was strong online.
Yes. Yes, very much so. And I mean, that's why it kind of drives me. Like, I just wish that I had it.
Yeah.
I just wish that I was on that level, because you can see, I mean, it's definitely going to be it's a business benefit to it. And not having that kind of presence it could harm your business, because your competitors, your competitors are out there using it, and if that's all you need to get up there and kind of match their level.
Yeah.
And if that's too complicated for you, that can be a challenge. That can.
I think you got it already. In fact, I know you got it already. I work with a lot of talent and just people who are doing what they do, and obviously you're in leadership roles, so you're really comfortable in your skin. So I just have a feeling like someone's going to come through with the right equipment, right things, whatever else. You're going to have your business in there, and then it will just click. It'll just be that. But you haven't had a huge need to just go and go beyond that just yet. But I think it's coming. I know I was one of the people I brought up the melanin market because there was this young lady that I knew that wrote, and you talk about social influencers. She works with plants. She's like, I don't like people. I like plants. And, she always jokes about it, but it's real. And I said, head nod to that. And so she came out with this whole book series, and it just took off. And it was all because of like her social media game. But if you catch her in real life, you wouldn't think
that was her thing.
That was her thing at all. And
that's how powerful social media is.
It really is.
And I think the kids know it too, which is why they're trying to tap in as well.
Yeah.
Because they want everybody to know what they're doing, or everybody to see what they're doing. I mean, me and my daughter were at home just preparing dinner or doing the fun stuff. She, hold on, let me get my camera. We got to record. And I'm like, we don't have, it's just dinner.
Yeah.
But she
You'd be surprised at how many people aren't, cooking the dinner with their kids. Yeah. So, she out here putting it out here. Hey, y'all take notes. This is how dad does it,
Yes. Yeah.
And so her name's Amy Polite, and she did this book, Garden My Hair. Mm-hmm. And so Garden My Hair was kind of the correlation between her natural hair journey and gardening, and like how you got to do these things. And it sounds a little far-fetched, but I started reading just like the preface to it and everything, and just kind of little intro. And I was like, okay, now I'm a natural hair person, as you can see, but I was like, okay, this makes sense. Now I didn't go into it, but because I guess I'm a guy, but I definitely had some journeys with it, but I didn't realize how many blogs and how many YouTube videos and about natural hair. So she did all this, and it took off because a lot of people had that similar, but gardening was her jam. And so she's able to relate to that. And there was people who like gardening, and there was people who...
Oh, there's people who like gardening.
Love gardening.
My wife is, getting to that point. Okay. And so that's how I know, because when she's looking at plants, but when she's, and we've talked about gardening as well. So when we're looking at those types of things, she's going to Google and like do the research. And there's a huge calling for it. Lots of people. It was not hard to find. Groups of people. They're out there.
You jump on there.
And you speak their language, you'll get that audience.
And the other interesting part is like it was somehow it ended up bringing together different cultures.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So there were a lot of
plants. Doesn't have a color, doesn't have a face or image to it.
Sure.
Everybody.
Right. And so there were a lot of people who weren't Black that would read her book and then hear her journey about how people treated her with hair and different that and the other. There was so many layers to it that were unexpected. And so it's just such a wonderful thing to see like that type of, journey through social media and self-exploration, because then it's not about, it feels a little selfish at times. And that's kind of one of those things I'm kind of like, I want to make it be about someone else, but then if not you, then who, as people, said, right? And if not now, then when?
Yep.
And that's what I realized. She said, I would have never got and did my thing. But then once I realized I could put the focus on the book or the book about the plants and the hair, then I could get out of my shell and, like you said, kind of shine,
I love that.
Yeah. So she's been doing that. And I think that's a great example of like, just what our youth can do. Some of them, they are the stars. They want to be in front of the camera. They're supposed to be in front of the camera, but it takes so many different people in production to like make it happen. But I want to thank you just for sharing the vision. You're one of the rare people that like can see it because that generation's there.
Yep.
And I've been interviewing people of, older generations, younger generations. I got to get to the influencers. They're hard to catch up with, but I'm gonna catch me some. Like they're like Pokemon. But I wanted to talk with you because you were the like real life influencer that I wanted to hear you, because you got the vision that I was sharing with you about agency. So I thank you for that, man.
Man, I look forward to see how everything goes, and I love the whole idea and concept, and I look at it as being a life-changing opportunity for our community and our youth.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yes, I'm excited about it. I appreciate you for having me.
Yeah. All right, we'll see you next time, brother.
All right, absolutely.